wants to do YouTube. I think he will make it. Yep.
yeah, why would it be? I think it's too late to change it anyway because yeah, I'm gonna have to just leave it. I think. Hey, you guys, can you hear it? We're about to start here shortly. I can hear you now. Okay, stand by. We will be starting in a minute, guys. Sorry it's taking so long. How is everyone's week? We will be starting in a minute, guys. Sorry it's taking so long.
Some things in life are better in threes, including the tax benefits when you save for your child's future education with a state-sponsored 529 college savings account from the Michigan Education Savings Program. When you save with MESP, you can get triple tax advantages. Tax-deferred growth means your savings can grow over time. Any account earnings are also 100% tax-free when used for higher education expenses like tuition. Plus, Michigan taxpayers filing jointly are eligible for an income tax deduction up to $10,000 on contributions to an MESP account. We are MESP, and we help Michigan families save for education.
Later, resident of a maximum security prison and apparently the subject of his girlfriend's daydreams. Now, if that doesn't make you question your taste in soulmates, I really don't know what does. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Timeless Mysteries Live Edition, the show where you dive headfirst into the strangest corners of human behavior, surface with more questions than answers, and occasionally wonder why we do this to ourselves in the first place. I'm your host, thrilled to explore this bizarre, baffling, and kind of downright head-scratching mystery with you guys. Tonight, Crafted Evidence Podcast is here with us again, and we're going to talk about this Reddit post. So buckle up, folks. This one is kind of weird. So let's talk about the catalyst for tonight's episode. Some poor guy pours his heart out, saying his girlfriend, his supposed one and only, has begun exchanging letters with Chris Watts in prison. You know, he's actually writing her back. You can imagine how he feels: betrayed. He's angry. He's confused. Maybe he's thinking, is my cooking that bad? But the funniest part is that it actually turns out that she had been talking to him before they even started dating. So what do you do if your significant other is that fascinated with a man who literally ended his own family's lives? Maybe giving her up is kind of a win. What do you think, Jennifer?
Well, you guys, there's a name for people like this. And it's actually, psychologists kind of study it. Hey, Rabbit Hole, welcome in, you guys. I'm not sure if any of you have heard about this post, but yeah, this gal was writing to Chris Watts. So I'm going to go ahead and read the post for you guys. And Rob, if you want to pull up in that folder, I can't even think of the name of it, but there is an actual disorder, a psychological disorder. And I took a paper from a doctor.
Hyperbristophilia?
Yes. So we could talk about that after I read this. So I'm going to go ahead and read the Reddit post, you guys. Welcome in, Banana Ivers, Hound Lover. Do you guys have audio now? I think that's just on my channel, not Rob's channel. I'm sure you have audio. We're kind of doing it on both channels today. But, okay, a 29-year-old man. His girlfriend is 28. This post is over 100 days old, but I still find it interesting, and I wanted to talk about it because what if this was you? Okay. So, my girlfriend is pen pals with a convicted murderer. How do we work through this? Just to preface, I'm new to Reddit as of a couple weeks ago. And also, guys, I do want to say, yes, this could be fake, but the guy sounds really desperate for help. So, I don't have anyone to talk to about this. And this is the final option I could think of, was to create an account and post. I can't seem to find anything wrong with making a post. So, sorry if it's long, but I'm using mobile. I don't know why he had to explain that, but okay. My girlfriend, we're going to call her J. We have multiple friends, generally share the same group of friends. That's how we met. So I don't want to risk my friends finding out about this. So that's why he's here on Reddit. He doesn't want to talk to the friends about it. Hey there, Lucy. So that's why he's on Reddit. Anyway, we've gotten serious over the past 6 months or so, to the point that we've been looking into apartments and even picked out a couple options. My lease is about to end, and so is hers, so it's perfect timing. We both have decent jobs, blah, 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 blah. I've been really excited to start this new chapter with her. I even started looking at rings, so he's getting ready to pop the question, you guys. I feel she's the one for me. She's smart, beautiful, funny. Everyone loves her, and she's overall a great person. Now, on to the issue. About 2 weeks ago, I was spending the weekend at her place. We usually alternate weekends, but I wasn't feeling good this weekend. So I stayed at her house that weekend because I had a stomach bug. She invited me to the apartment, took care of me, doing all these sweet things, making me soup, stuff like that. She was at work from 10 to 6 on Monday, and he's very detailed, which is funny. Like he's got to give us the deets. So I spent most of my time sleeping, but then I didn't make it to the toilet on time. So I don't mean to laugh at the guy, but it's just funny. He had to tell us that part. So he made a gross accident on her bathroom floor. I didn't want to leave it there for her to clean up, so I asked her where I could find extra towels. She told me in the linen closet. She had some old towels. So while she was busy at work, I went digging the linen closet, looking behind for all of the gross towels so he didn't use the good ones. And he ended up on the top shelf seeing a little shoebox that he's never seen before. And he didn't want to go through her things. He says they respect each other's privacy and he completely trusts her. But as he was cleaning up, he just his head started turning. You know what I mean? So he said he couldn't help it. So he decided to look at one of the envelopes inside of the shoebox. And it was addressed to her from a prisoner. Now, he said there were also drawings and letters in this box. And he says he feels guilty about opening the box, but curiosity got the best of him. He said, this is where I feel I need to explain. I found it odd because she told me everything about her past, her family, her childhood, all of her exes, her pet names, but has never mentioned this. So, she also told me she's never known anyone in prison. So it turns out that these letters dated back before her and I started dating, about 3 months ago. So he says that he realized on the letter in this post, he does not name who the prisoner is, but he says it was a very high profile case where the man annihilated his pregnant wife and 2 children. He said, I'm not a crime buff, but even I recognized the name. So, he says, it's really screwing with my sorry, it's really screwing with my head that this man brutally killed someone, and he even confessed it. I ended up reading through 3 or 4 letters, and it made me sick to my stomach, which made it even worse because I had a stomach bug. I just had to put everything back after feeling nauseous. I cleaned up all of the mess in the bathroom, and I drove myself home. Later that night, she wanted to see me, but I made an excuse that I just wasn't feeling good. And he says pretty much he can't get this off of his mind, and he's been making excuses for days because he doesn't know if he should confront her or not. And so he kind of ends this post by saying, I still love her. I deeply love her, and I miss her all of the time. I've been sleeping like shit because I'm super distracted by the thought of this, trying to figure out how do I handle it. Do I talk to her about it? I don't want her to get angry that I snooped. I also don't want to end the relationship over this. I genuinely see a future with this woman. I love her with all my heart. But is there something maybe I'm not considering? I know most of you will say, just talk to her. And yes, that's the logical thing. But this dude killed his entire family. How could she even entertain the idea of writing him a letter? Maybe it's just morbid curiosity on her part. I don't know what I should do. Should I even approach the subject? Any advice is appreciated. So, Rob, what are your thoughts?
Well, first thing, we're not here just to roast this guy. You know, he could be, it could be fiction. First, I mean, we've got to put that out there. And, you know, we don't know if it's actually true, but it is an interesting thing to talk about, I think, because this kind of thing actually happens, you know, all the time, not with necessarily with prisoners, but you end up playing video games with somebody and you get emotionally attached to someone. So, you know, this heartbroken Redditor wants advice. What should you do? You know, I don't, you know, it's hard to say. Is there an I can fix him button kind of thing? I don't know. But, you know, we briefly stated the phrase hyperbristophilia, and that's the morbid attraction to people who commit crimes. It's a real thing. People have been writing inmates for years. And if you think about it, there's more than one reason why somebody might want to do this. They need that emotional connection with somebody, right? And if they're stuck in prison, they can't go nowhere also. But yeah, I don't know, like, what would I do? That's the thing. What would I do if this was something I found out? I would like to say that I would have, you know, found somebody else, because I think it's kind of scary. Somebody, even if it's not a physical, like a physical thing, it's an emotional thing. She's emotionally attached to somebody who is a killer. I don't know what that says about the guy either. If you think about how people always pick the same kind of people, they have a type, and you know, there's some crazy things here. But I did find that hyperbristophilia thing. It's defined by Dr. John Money way back in 1986. And it was initially used to explain the paraphilia, where individuals sexual erotically are turned on by a partner who has a predatory history. You know, it's a fancy way of saying they like criminals, they like the bad people. It's kind of morphed into something else, but it basically describes people who are attracted to killers. If you look back at the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, he had groupies in the courtroom. Like, they were blowing him kisses while his attorneys are talking. Like really, it's kind of creepy. Ted Bundy also, I'm sure there's others.
Manson.
I can't imagine.
This is a thing. Yeah, Laura asked in comments, what did the letters say? It makes a huge difference if she was professing her love or was it just general? So he made it sound, and I apologize if I skipped this part. The post is so long and I didn't want to bore you guys because he's very detailed. He did say that they were emotional letters. So I take emotional letters as they were talking about their feelings, right? I mean, that's kind of how I took it. Rabbit Hole said, let it go.
What would you guys do if your partner was writing Chris Watson? He was writing them back. Would you be excited and be like, hey, I want to write him too? Or would you be like, I draw the line. I can't be around you.
I think the dilemma for the guy really is that these letters are old, and he doesn't mention that there were any current ones. And I also was trying to go back and see if he's up. I've emailed the guy because I wanted to kind of interview him, right, and be like, "Tell me more." But it's not like she was cheating on him writing Chris Watts, right? I mean,
well, if it was a secret and there's an emotional connection, I believe that technically qualifies as cheating. She's supposed to be with somebody, and that partner is supposed to be that emotional, stability in her life or whatever. And if she's reaching out to somebody like Chris Watts, say if it wasn't Chris Watts and it was her coworker, she's texting back and forth 24 hours a day, sharing, intimate things about their pasts. That's an emotional connection that, in itself is not wrong. But if your spouse doesn't like it and it gets kind of weird, I mean, it is technically cheating, I think.
I think it's hard because he's not married, right? They're just kind of starting their relationship. The letters date back before they started dating. It's like hard, I really feel for the guy. Like if this is real, I really feel for him because I feel like it's kind of off limits for him to confront her about, but I'm concerned.
There's a lot to be concerned about because, I mean, it says a lot about you if you accept that behavior and allow it to happen. What if it gets, stronger? What if the feelings get, bigger? I don't know. I mean, I don't know, should you worry if your partner is writing to a prisoner? I guess it really just depends on if there's any possibility that she's going to be driving down to the prison to see him on the weekends, or something like that. I mean, it's definitely strange behavior. And if it did happen, if it did start before they were together, that's okay, as long as it's not continuing, because then it's weird, right?
That's what he said. He made it sound like, I don't see any updated posts where he says she's still writing. It's more like all of these letters were before their relationship. But I'm concerned with the fact that, does she have like this weird obsession with murderers, or did she just have some, I don't know, like reason to write Chris, and then obviously it turned romantic in some way, and I think that's concerning too, because like when he said she's told me all about her exes, you think that might have came up, like, well, I was kind of chatting with Chris Watts for a while,
I don't know, but Chris himself, he's serving multiple life sentences in Waupun, Wisconsin. Um, you know, he's pretty isolated, and the only thing he gets is his mail. And if you look at that Tallman's book, I don't know if I'd actually call it a book, but his little short story, really. But he says that Chris started giving him, letters, and then there's like all this stuff about inmates sharing this stuff and selling letters to other people and things like that, and like that is very bizarre to me. But there are parallels to like online long distance relationships with the pen pal scenario. It's easy today to talk to people far away, whether you're playing video games or chat apps or you're hanging out on my live stream. There's so many different ways that we can connect. But if you're in a relationship and then you're, I don't know, there's a line somewhere, and it's like hard to see, I think. I don't know what to say. It's I don't know. I'd have to really think hard about it and come up with a really good answer. But I don't know that there is one. It really just depends on the person. Something that comes to mind is, if this is one like thing that's odd, it's kind of a red flag for you. Well, she's talking to a criminal. That's weird, right, guys? When he talks to his friend. But what if there's like 3 or 4 other things too?
Arabelle said
we don't know.
Well, even with chatting with you, Rob, like live on here, I talked to my husband about it before I did it, because it's like, look what time it is. It's nighttime. I'm talking with another male, I felt like, gotta talk about this, gotta tell him I'm doing it. He was supportive of it, but yeah, I almost feel like he needs to just come clean and be like, hey, listen, I found your box.
I found your secret stash, and I know all about your love life with Chris Watts, the murderer.
And maybe it could be something like someone in the chat wrote, maybe she's working on a college paper. Maybe she was trying to write a book. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you guys. There's a lot of people who are trying to write a book about Watts. And what did I just tell you before we started this live? I said, I'm not going to talk bad about other content creators, but there's one band from YouTube, and I feel he is just getting close to the Watts family so he can write a book. So I think that there are people who kind of have to start this relationship with Chris to be able to get him to divulge information so that they can write their book.
Well, remember the other day I was telling you that you should just write him and then try to get him to write you back, and then, casually over time, throw in those real questions and see if he responds. But you got to get him hooked first.
Yeah. I even told my husband about it, because my husband still works in the news business. If you're new here, you guys, I used to, I consider myself retired now, but I used to be a journalist. So we would have contact and phone calls from prisoners all the time. And it was really nothing you would think about, because we were trying to sometimes share a story. Or get an interview. And you're lying if you try to say that writing Chris Watts and getting an interview would not be amazing. It would, because he doesn't do interviews. So, the fact that Sherilyn Cato got him to write her, I'm sure she was over the moon excited, right? When she, he signed the release saying, yep, I'm going to do a book with you. We're going to do this. everyone wants to get in his mind because we all want to make sense of what the hell happened.
Well, I think if you do get into Chris Watts's mind, what you're going to find is that he doesn't even know what's in there himself. And that's why his story changes all the time. I think he doesn't know. He tries to understand it himself, but he can't. I mean, I don't know. I have never spoken to him. I don't expect to ever speak to him. But I mean, I would like to think that there's a human in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And somehow he, in that moment, there was some kind of partitioning of the mind. And, he kind of stepped outside of himself and did what he did. And I don't think he can. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's like, could he articulate how he actually felt? Is he going to be telling the truth, at a real level that's actually honest? Or is he going to try to make himself look better than he is? So, is he going to say, well, I actually had these feelings and I actually didn't want this to happen? And all these things that he never really thought. We don't know what actually goes on in his mind, even if it comes out of his mouth.
Right. I have a problem with, and I know, Rob, you haven't read the Sherilyn Cato book, and I will tell you guys, I've kind of reviewed it twice. I reviewed it when it first came out, and then
Which one is that? What's the title of that one?
Letters to Christopher.
I have, actually.
Okay, so you've read it. I cannot remember what chapter it is, but he says he fantasized. He uses the word fantasized about.
But this book got it's not in circulation anymore, and she got sued for something.
She got
so she made up most of it.
But the part she got sued for was the way she was describing scenery. It was not anything in the letters. All of that was factual because she actually shows the letters in the book. So I kind of feel bad for her getting a bad rap about that. But in his own words, he told her he was fantasizing about how he was going to do this for weeks. He didn't impulsively do this. That is so scary to me.
Well, I don't know. That book, from what I gathered, was that it was all copyright stuff. Like she plagiarized half of it, and it's not a real story.
Kind of hard to plagiarize it though when it's his letters. She has his letters in there.
But are they actually?
Yes, they're handwritten.
I get it, but I don't know. The stuff in there doesn't seem real. And I think actually that's where I heard where somebody asked Chris Watts how he felt afterwards, and he said powerful. I think I read it in that book because it's not in the interviews and the interrogations and the court records and stuff.
Remember him saying powerful. I do remember his quote of saying, I felt justified to kill anything that came in my path if something came in my path that morning.
That's scary.
Yeah. So if a cop pulled you over, were you planning to do something? What does he mean by that?
Well, the one thing that comes to mind is when I hear that, I think of all it takes is probably just a little bit of a, somebody smack him, and he probably would stop feeling like that. I think I've seen people wear rubber bands on their hands whenever they get angry. They snap it, and it kind of snaps them out of the rage.
Yeah. Riding down the rabbit hole says, and I think I really like where you're going with this. I don't believe he fantasized about it. I'm sorry, NK's ultimatum and pushing him to the edge is why he did what he did. Sometimes I do feel he is trying to keep us off the Nicole Kessinger path by Well, not as of lately. Now, he's kind of coming out with it's her fault. But in the beginning, I definitely think he was trying to take our focus off of her. Mirabelle says an ultimatum couldn't get most people to do what he did. Yeah. I feel Chris was always an odd duck, even from a teenager. He admitted it. His mom admitted it. He was socially weird. I think Chris lacks normal emotions. If you look at some of the discovery, he had to Google what does love feel like. Very weird things like that.
Yeah, last night I was trying to find that book by Tolman. I have not read it all, but I watched a couple of videos of people reading it out loud.
Mhm.
And there was, the whole thing seemed a little weird to me. And like my first thought was that it was some kind of plan between the two to like stoke the fire that Nicole Kessinger was a part of it to potentially get a new trial, because there's not very many ways that he can actually get an appeal of any kind, because he gave up his rights. But another person who was involved might be enough to bring the trial. Reopen it. But obviously it kind of failed, because that book, you can't buy it anymore. And there isn't a lot of people who talk about it that much. I think compared to all the other stuff that people talk about Chris Watts anyway.
Dylan,
Hey Lynn, how's it going?
Dylan's book is still available, but he kind of released it in 3 sections, which I'm going to be honest, that was a hook to get you to buy 3 different books, right? I mean, good marketing scheme. Dylan has done some interviews with like other YouTubers, which, he talks about his life with Chris and that they were really close. And how the two of them actually developed a relationship. We are going to take a look here in a minute at some letters that Chris received just out of curiosity. If you did not see these in the discovery, they're in there. But Chris started receiving so much mail that he started giving it to other inmates. And one of his inmate friends was a guy named Dylan Tolman. And they did I want to say it's Oxygen. Well, one person did a special with Oxygen about writing and conversing with Chris Watts. If you guys didn't see it, I think it's called Secrets from Cellmates. And so Chris got this letter from a criminal psychologist. She was a very attractive woman. Her history is actually really interesting. Her mother used to write Charles Manson. And then she met the girl's father and they fell in love and ended up she was going to move out with Charles Manson on the ranch or whatever. Ended up not doing it. But anyway, so this girl became a clinical psychologist because of kind of the way she was raised. Her father was in and out of prison. So Chris gave her letter to Dylan Tolman, his inmate friend, and then the two of them started writing back and forth. But Dylan quickly realized all she would do was ask questions about Chris. Was it because she was romantically interested in him? Was it because she's a criminal psychologist and wants to write a book about him? We'll never really know. I definitely suggest checking out that episode, you guys. But ultimately, Dylan ended up ending this relationship with her. He was engaged because he was like, you're just talking about Chris too much. So I know that your MO is not being with me. It's getting close to Chris.
I think that that person that you're talking about, Chris, said he got a message from God that he needed to give that letter to him.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to note in there because it tells you a little bit about how he thinks about things now.
Yeah. And
It's
Dylan,
a little bit of a little bizarre that he would say it like that. You know, God told me to give you this letter.
well, he calls Chris his spiritual brother. I am interested. We're 6 years out. This was kind of early on in the case. Dylan's books just got published, but here's the crazy thing. You are right, Rob, now that I think about it. Dylan's first 2 books got published on Amazon. Then all of a sudden, he got a court order to pull them from Amazon, saying he can't sell them anymore. So that tells me the only people who would do that is the Watts family. Because Chris is not earning money from those books, so it wouldn't be the Rusick family. It's probably Chris trying to cover himself by being like, don't release the book. Because it was a little bit about Kessinger and her involvement. And then the other half of the book was like their testament of how God has changed their lives and things like that. But you're right, Rob. I totally forgot about that. The book did get pulled recently.
Yeah.
Very recently.
Well, it was only first published like at the end of last year, right? Or something.
Well, he kind of rolled them out slowly, but the third one just got rolled out a couple months ago. So, like, you're sitting there eager to hear the next, detail. But as soon as it was out, it was pulled. And maybe that's why he's not answering interview requests. Because there's it's so weird, he was just doing interviews and now he won't reply anymore. So maybe legally he can't talk about it. I don't know.
Well, I think I don't know. I don't know what the laws are about that, but it seems like you should be able to, when we live in a country like we do, we got freedom of speech. You should be able to say whatever you want as long as it's not hurting somebody else. And then in that book, actually, one of the books, I think one of them described Shanann attacked Chris with a knife, and that's how she got strangled. And that might have been what it was that got the books pulled. Because, first of all, there was no defensive wounds on that woman. So it doesn't make sense that there was any struggle, that she had a knife, and that anything weird had happened like that. So she was most likely asleep and just strangled her, and she couldn't do anything about it. But it was in one of the books, at least from what I could tell. I was watching these videos of people reading it, and so I don't have an actual copy of the text, but if anybody has a copy of the text, I'd like to look at it.
It's out there. I know because I've read it. But
well, I think it was out there. I can't find any PDF files or anything but there's a few YouTube channels that have they read most of the books. And I thought that part about the knife was really strange, especially with the way, the autopsy report read. It just didn't sound plausible. I think in the first book, they were talking about the Jezebel thing, which I really think that worked, like the way they say it.
Yeah, because they're kind of using those biblical old terms. Alexandria in my chat says, was Dylan the cellmate that took a polygraph test and passed? I don't know if he took one, but I know he was willing to. There's also another prisoner who was with Watts who called Tammy Lee, and Rob, I've been meaning to send this to you because I want to do another live about it, like a whole separate live. This guy also called Tammy Lee and was like, I have more info on this case. And they were going to go interview him and he just was released in Wisconsin, and they were going to go do an interview. She said, I have to check with Coder and see, what his availability is. And they ended up never going. And the guy made like a post or a video online saying they never got back to me. So is it because there was no funding to fly out there to Wisconsin to give him a polygraph? I'm pretty sure the local police department would be willing to lend their equipment for that, right? I mean, like, let's just talk to the guy and see what he has to say. I can't believe they shut the, she called him back 2 times, too, to gather more information. Reading comments. Laura, it makes no sense at all. How can the investigation be over? They say as soon as he said, I did it and took the plea deal, I have heard that the city of Frederick, Colorado, stops funding on that investigation.
It makes sense. That's what it seems like what happened.
Yeah. So,
how long did he stay in prison in Colorado before he got moved? It wasn't.
I think.
Yeah, it wasn't that long, And I mean, once you got the confession and then the plea deal was on the table and they're discussing the plea deal, I mean, they're like, well, we don't have to do anything. We don't have to spend the city's money on attorneys and, investigative stuff.
And isn't it interesting too how like Nicole's dad in that investigation was asking a lot of questions of like, well, what happens if he pleads guilty? Do we have to still go through a trial? And I don't want to get his name wrong. Kovac was like, well, everything's still going to be in discovery. And he's like, well, what do you mean? Like her name's going to be in the discovery? And he's like, yeah. He's like, there's no way of hiding any of this. He's like, you're going to be in the media. And I think the dad was trying to figure out, is there a way to protect her by Chris pleading guilty? And this was before he even pleaded guilty, but the dad was kind of poking around to see what the options were.
Yeah, it's definitely strange how everything worked out. I know there's a lot of conspiracies theories out there, and it's hard to know the real reason, and until somebody tells us what the real reason was. If it was money, I mean, we should know that too, right? If it was that she was investigated enough that there was not enough to charge her with anything, they could say that too. But they don't say that exactly. They just say she wasn't investigated. She was never a part of any of it investigation. So they didn't even look, from what I can tell, aside from those interviews that were not interrogations.
Yeah, they were interviews. I also want to note, like, the books, the one Sherilyn Cato did, and the one Dylan did, Chris cannot have access to any funding whatsoever because of the Son of Sam laws. So, like, a great example of this, Rob and I were talking about the other day, he was working on a Jodi Arias video, you guys, to check that out when it comes out. Jodi is an artist, and she makes art and she sells it. That's how she makes money to eat in jail, like to go buy commissary, like, the junk food and all that. So because Jodi is not doing artistic work about her crime, she can profit off of it. Chris probably could write a book only about like religious stuff and profit from it, but he cannot mention his crime and profit. That is where they draw the line with that, in case people aren't really understanding of the Son of Sam law.
So I just found the Wikipedia page for Son of Sam laws, and I think they're different for every state, but you guys can look at this or look it up yourself also. But it's kind of interesting that killers are not allowed to profit off of their crimes. And at the same time, we all want to know what happened
Right.
from their perspective.
Imagine if they said, yes, Chris, you can write a book, but all of the proceeds go to the Rusick family, or
But see, the problem is that, it would give him some kind of like, power feeling thing that, they don't want him to have.
right.
It's like a little trophy. If he gets to write a book about it, he gets to relive those moments. And, if he's like most killers, he likes that feeling, whatever it felt like for him,
I don't even know if he feels anything inside.
See, I think he does sometimes. I think he doesn't a lot of times too. He somehow turns it on and off.
I even think, like, I know a lot of people wouldn't even want proceeds to come to the Rusick family because I'm, if you know my channel, I like to look at both sides of things. A lot of people feel that the family has profited way too much off of what has happened. But what if Chris wrote a book explaining what happened and the money goes to domestic violence victims or victims of tragedy?
I still don't think it's. I don't think there's any way that it could be done without, hurting people, because I don't think the Rusicks want to know every detail.
They know every detail.
Well, they don't really know every detail until Chris writes a book about it and describes it.
That's true. I do think the Rusicks know a little more than people give them credit for. Like, if you watch that Dr. Phil interview, the way Sandy is able to kind of explain in detail things about the girls, like, I'm shocked she was strong enough to describe some of the things she described, like that they had to fly the girl, or they couldn't fly the girls' bodies because there was so much oil that there could have been an explosion. Just like very detailed things she knows. Which, I mean, I don't know how she does it. I think her faith helps keep her strong to talk about these things.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine if killers were allowed to. I mean, they do. Like, if you listen to the Edmund Kemper stuff, he does go into details with his doctors and stuff about all of his crimes, and it's unnerving. It's really hard to process how nonchalant he is about everything. It's like he's out hunting, deer. He got a 30-point buck or something. But it's a person who had a family who cared about them and friends who cared about them, and they're gone. It's impossible to understand. I mean, even for me, I can't fully understand what it's like for the people who knew these people in real life. I mean, I can almost imagine it, but there's like I just don't think I can fully understand it, I don't think most of us can.
Cuffy says, I may piss everyone off, but I don't think he likes reliving it. He's haunted by his actions, and he should be, but I don't believe he feels gratification. I agree with that. I just don't think he feels as bad about it, and the reason I say that is the fact that he was able to sit there and eat a piece of pizza while their picture was sitting in front of them in the interrogation room. That really disturbs me. So I feel like Chris has the ability to block things out of his mind that a normal person maybe can't. But I also don't think he sits there thinking about, like, yeah, I'm glad I did that. I think he has regrets that he did that. Maybe he's even shocked by his own capability to do what he did.
See, I don't know about that. I don't quite agree that he regrets anything other than getting caught. Because if he has the regret now, that means he could have reasoned with himself and, chose another way.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He chose the wrong way. And he could have stopped at every person he killed. He could have stopped, and he kept going.
Kept going.
And I've actually wondered if his whole plan was to take his own life at the end, and he chickened out.
Yeah.
But then I see him on the porch doing those interviews with a smile on his face, trying to look like he's worried about his wife and his kids. And he knows exactly where they are and why they're gone.
Yeah. And Tammy Lee said, I saw you put the gas can in the truck. And she said, were you planning to do something to yourself? And he said, yeah, but then I realized there could have been a bigger explosion and other people could have gotten hurt. And it's hard to wrap your head around him saying that.
Yeah, I don't think he could have made the thing explode. I don't think that, I think he has an idea, probably working on these things. Everybody's like, well, if you do this and that, it's going to explode. We don't know if he actually tried to do something and it didn't work. But usually when people have these like huge plans, like, a massive explosion, I don't know. I just think that most of us aren't going to be able to make it actually work. It sounds good, when you're imagining it, but in reality, it's a lot more complex, and it takes a lot more knowledge to do stuff like that. I don't think he could have blew that thing up.
Right. Well, do you guys want to take a look at these prison letters? Let us know. We have a couple of them. I'm going to fix the audio real quick, Rob.
So who is this?
Who's who?
The picture that I just put up.
Let's see. Is it a black and white?
Yep. Anybody know who this is?
That is one of the gals. Let me look at my Google documents here, and I'll tell you who that matches to. She wrote him 3 times.
Let me see if I can find the letter that she wrote, but I don't know. It says on here Tammy sends photo, but I don't see any letters from Tammy. But some of these letters are scary.
Okay, so let's
like
look at
this one.
Okay. Tammy's letter. I'm going to try my best to see if we can read some of these. It's going to be difficult because the handwriting is hard to read on some of them. But let's see. These mostly are letters from when he was in Colorado, by the way. Of course. Which one's that one from?
It says on the file that it's Tammy.
Okay, I'm trying to do better at labeling my files. Okay, let's see what Tammy's letter is. Oh my gosh, of course. I can't. Okay. Tammy. Yeah, that's weird. I don't have it in here.
Yeah, I don't see it either, but this one from
Three.
Hannah looks like we could read it at least. Let me.
It's hard for me to.
You found the Tammy letter?
It's on my laptop, which is in another room. Maybe I can pull it up on my tablet and I'll be able to read it better. There is one that I got a screenshot of that I have to imagine it was really intense for Chris to get these letters and not know what's going to be inside of them. But it looks like he had a lot of supportive, good letters, honestly.
Yeah, like this one that I just found. I can actually see what this one says. It says, "Hello, Chris. I just wanted to write and say hello and introduce myself. I know you're going through a tough time right now, and I hope this letter gives you some hope." I can't imagine writing this letter to somebody. I don't know about you. I couldn't write this to him. What does it say? "I currently live in Hawaii on the island of Maui, but I'm from Longmont originally. I used to be a professional snowboarder back in the day and moved here in 2005. As I write this, we are currently in the middle of a hurricane." I don't know. I couldn't write it. I couldn't write them and just be like, "Hey, how's it going? This is this is entertainment for a prisoner. They don't get much, I think. So
Oh my god. This one's like so appalling. Do you see one labeled Candace Writes Again?
yeah, I saw that one. Oops, hold on.
The best I can. But the handwriting. Dear Chris, hey, this is Candace again. LOL. I'm going to write you a letter every day until you write me back. I'm 100% serious. Everyone keeps asking me why I'm writing you, or why do I care? I'm writing you after watching all of your interviews and court hearings. They're saying you're a monster, and that you're a POS, and that you're a psychopath. I know I spelled that wrong, but I've been telling them that they're wrong, and that I do not feel the way they do. Well, for what it's worth, I hope that you're okay. I just want to be your friend and talk every now and then. And I'd like to be put on your visitation list if that's ever a possibility. LOL. When I saw your very first interview, I was like, OMG, I have to get to know this guy because I believe in everything you said to everyone. You're probably thinking, oh my god, who is this girl and why is she so weird? Ha 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 ha. Sorry. That's because honestly, who would ever do what I'm doing, right? Well, I definitely don't make it a habit writing people that are in prison or jail. I can't read this bottom part, but it's crunched up. But like, just disturbing, Oh, and then she ends it with this. Saying, like, you don't have to write me and you can be like, F off, leave me alone. But you're getting my letters. If you do write me back, I don't even care what it is. Tell me what makes you. Oh my gosh. I mean, sorry. I'm
This
like,
person sounds a little scary herself, to be honest.
I know you're getting my letters, but if you do write me back, I don't even care what it is. I would be the happiest girl alive. That's for sure. Like, sorry, I had to like reread that to make sure I was reading that. I'll tell you, I will let you go, and I really hope I hear back from you soon. Love, always, Candace. And then she does these hashtags of like, Team Chris. Chris is innocent. Love him. So cute. That
Oh my god.
disturbing on a whole nother level.
Well, in the U.S. especially, there's a lot of people with, real mental health issues, and they take medication. And when they stop taking medication, their mental illness comes back like in fivefold. We don't know what was happening when this girl wrote this, but maybe she was, on a high and just thought that everything she said was perfect and sounded reasonable, but to us it doesn't sound that good.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of scary to me. Like Fatal Attraction, scary kind of,
Yeah. I don't want to, I don't want to ever make fun of anyone with mental, health issues, but like, does she not understand? Like, here's what I don't understand is her saying, like, I believe everything you said on the porch. Like, he came clean and said what he did. I mean, unless this letter was written
before
no,
she maybe confessed.
She even put the date on it. It was the 21st. So he confessed what, the 15th? Yeah. 4 days out. No, okay. So it happened the 13th, 14th, 15th. So, yeah, I mean, it was a while.
So I just got to ask the people in the chat, do any of you write Chris Watts? Like, no judgment or anything.
Actually, I was going to mention that off the cuff.
I would just like to know, like, I've actually thought about like writing a letter and then put a stamp on it and show you guys how to do it, but I don't really want him writing me back. I realize I'm a guy and he probably wouldn't, but
well, Rob and I have been discussing doing it because, I although I'm not working as a journalist anymore, I still consider myself once a journalist, always a journalist. But Rob brought up a good point to me. Like, I would want to write him because I'm a very blunt person. I would want to write him and be like, getting to the point, like right away. Why'd you do what you do? And Rob's like, whoa, you can't do that. You have to like kind of finesse him and build a relationship with him. And I was like, well, I'd have to get a P.O. box because I don't want him to have us. But
I think I said you could always have him, use your mom's address and then,
right? But yeah, no judgment in the chat. Off cuff you actually earlier when you said, I think people hate me for saying this. I think Rob and I probably have the most unjudgmental channel on here where you can say whatever you want and we're going to respect your opinion and we're not going to judge you for it or like ban you for it or anything like that. That's not.
Well, within reason. If you're talking about committing crimes, then obviously there's my line.
But we're not like, we're open-minded to everyone's opinion and respect that. Gacy? What is she talking about? The Gacy case? Laura says, I'd love to convince him to tell him to tell the complete truth. Yeah. What would be interesting, which I don't think would ever happen, but if they could like make Nicole Kessinger go see him and wear a wire and let those two talk alone, like what would the conversation be?
Well, I think at this point he would probably be upset with her. Didn't she like supposedly write him, according to this book that I haven't actually read? I've listened to a couple of other YouTube channels, but I think they said 6 months. After 6 months, she stopped writing under a fake name. Or, he wouldn't know for sure, right, that it was her.
There was speculation that the professional snowboarder from Hawaii was Nicole.
Well, she was a sandboarder, right? At least in one video for one day.
So there was speculation that that was maybe Nicole. I think if Nicole was going to write him, she'd pretend to be a guy or something.
I don't know how they would have figured it out, to be honest. Like they would have had to plan it in advance. I think that Chris Watts thought she would, and then he might have thought she was talking to him for like 6 months, and it wasn't even her.
Oh, Mirabelle has a good comment. If you can pin that. I still don't think I can pin, but yeah, there's people who buy and write inmates so that they can sell stuff online. I mean, that is a true thing. Writing down the rabbit hole. Yes, there's claims that she wrote through a fake name. It makes me wonder, do you guys think it's possible that, you know, that Chris speaks with his parents, obviously, and I do think that the gentleman, I won't use his name, but the YouTuber who was banned from YouTube, who tries to seek the truth, I believe he also talks to Chris because he's so close with the Watts family. I wonder if they have shown him a picture of what Nicole Kessinger looks like and what he thinks.
Can he really even complain, though? I've heard he looks just as bad, and he's actually going bald.
Yeah. Well, I would be stressed out in there too, going bald, right? Yes, rabbit hole. That's who I'm referring to. But I promised myself when I got on YouTube, I would not ever criticize other YouTubers because I wouldn't, want people to do that to me. But I do think that he probably talks to Chris because he has so much info that the only way, he's admittedly had a relationship with Ronnie. But I believe if you have a relationship with someone's dad, you probably are also talking to that person as well. Wonder if his family helps him communicate with Nicole. I don't know.
I think they would have approved Nicole before, the murders, obviously.
Yeah, and there's speculation that she called Ronnie Watts a couple days before that happened. I don't know Ronnie Watts' number, so I didn't fact check that. Yes, there's some North Carolina phone numbers on her phone bill. However, if I don't know who the number is, I'm not going to say who it is. You know what I mean? I haven't dug that deep into it because I think that's a far stretch. And even if Nicole was talking to his parents, I don't think that means that there was some plot to do anything. I think it just meant maybe he introduced his new girlfriend to his parents and they were all keeping it a secret, which is not a good thing to do when you're married. But I don't think that there was this huge plot against Shanann involving the whole family. I know there's people out there who think that. Eventually they would have hated NK2. Yeah, I kind of feel like the mom probably would have. Moms can be like that. They never think anyone is good enough for their son. That's just a mom thing.
I don't think I've heard much in the way of Chris's dad being like that hateful and spiteful about different things and holding grudges.
I feel bad for Ronnie. I do. He was very active in the girls' lives. And even Frankie Rusick Jr. said that he always was on Shanann's Facebook page asking about the girls, always involved with the girls' lives. So I feel really bad for him. I think his reaction, and this is just my opinion, I would love to hear your guys' opinions too. I think when he was in the interrogation room and Chris told him all that, I don't think he processed it, and that's why his only reaction was, what did he say? Like, Jesus, dear God's son, or like he said something. But I still don't think he processed in his mind what his son had done. What do you think, Rob?
Well, I know that I well, what I see is that they were trying to be supportive regardless, but I don't think that was the right way to go about it because they lost their grandkids too. So
Right.
they're probably, I mean, the mom definitely in the beginning seemed to be in denial, complete denial. I don't know how you could process that. You've got somebody you care about, and then they do something crazy like this. You can't like see the person who grew up before your eyes and like put it together with somebody who could be so angry and so cruel and do what he did. And so it's logical that there's some kind of disconnect, and you just put that other part out of your mind and just focus on what you already believe and that your son is a good person. So I think I think it's understandable. I don't agree with how she handled things or the way she said things on camera, especially.
Yeah, I think also you mentioned this in one of our other lives that it probably takes years to process everything that happened, and especially because they were lied to by Chris in the beginning, and they thought that Chris just killed Shanann because Shanann hurt the children. So in their mind, they wanted to keep that scenario because it didn't make their son look so monstrous and evil, right? Like they almost wanted that terrible scenario to be true, even though it's a bad scenario. It was almost better to them than what really happened.
Well, I think the stages of grief, if you think of that, I mean, this is a grieving, even if they don't publicly say it, they're still grieving. They're grieving both the loss of their grandchildren and their son, despite him being alive. It's still like the way he is, the way he was, is gone. Like that person is gone. He's now a criminal. He's now in prison, and yeah, they still get to talk to him, but it's not the same because eventually they're going to kind of come to terms with what he did, and they're going to see him as capable of that, and it's going to ruin, you know, their. I mean, it just doesn't work. Um, Staying in denial. I don't know. You see it a lot with serial killers, and I think I've said this a couple times. Um, Imagine the most ordinary person that and think of all the good things that person's done in their entire life, and then imagine you wake up the next morning and find out that they're a murderer. How are you going to come to terms with that?
Yeah.
I don't think it's anybody can easily come to terms with that, and it happens on almost every like repeat killer out there. They're like this ordinary person. I mean, it's weird once you start thinking about it that way. These are just the people that seem the most normal to the people around them, and then they've got to, you know, process what they know and what they found out, and try to make it fit, and it just doesn't fit. I mean, it's hard to explain it, I think, but um, there's a lot of processing somebody's got to do if they go through this. Even if it's something smaller, like say, you grew up with a favorite uncle, and then you find out that he was molesting your cousin or something. Like those. This is the same thing, but I mean, it affects you the same way. Um, it's not the same crime, obviously, but it still would affect you the same way because you got to like think back to all those things that seemed off slightly, but you put it out of your head because of all the, what you wanted to see. You wanted to see the good person that he portrayed or she portrayed themselves as.
Yeah. It's interesting you even used the uncle example because Chris was an uncle to Jamie's kids, and it makes me wonder, like I'm sure he was a good uncle and a cool uncle. And like, you have to think about, I wonder what their thoughts are of like him. You know, I'm sure he's never hurt them, or we know there's no record of him hurting them or anything like that.
Somebody asked me recently if there was any evidence of any type of domestic abuse for the kids before Chris did this. And I haven't tried to look for any like reports. I mean, if there was, there wouldn't be police reports, or, they would have probably gone to jail and stuff like that.
And, I did a video on this a couple weeks ago because a lot of people said that, and Sherilyn Cato actually asked Chris about this when she went to visit him. There is a CPS claim out there because if you go on Reddit, you are going to see there's pages that are very against Shanann, and I'm not, going to go into detail of it. If you want to go explore it yourself, you can. There are people who feel that Shanann was abusive towards the children in ways of like food and making them do strict schedules and making them take medicine every day that they didn't need, things like that. Anyway, you can go down that path if you want. But anyway, there is a rumor that there was a CPS claim filed. So Sherilyn Cato, when she went to visit Chris, said, is there any truth to a CPS claim? And he said, well, not that I know of, but my parents said there is one out there. Well, I was digging into that and reached out to one of the officials in Frederick, and they sent me to a website where it's like all of the CPS cases, right, ever filed. Well, there is a CPS case, but guess why? Because he killed his children. So if you go to that video, I pull up the page where it shows, doesn't give their names, but it says, 4-year-old girl, 3-year-old deceased. The interesting thing about that document is they say it happened at home, which I don't know if they're saying that because he did the situation twice, but anytime a child dies, the state has to open up a case, but it gets closed right away because there's really nothing to investigate. Had the children survived, yes, there'd be an open case opened and investigated, but it was open and closed immediately. So technically there was an open case, but it wasn't about Shanann abusing them or anything like that. It was,
I think she was a good mom. And, Cuffy says she didn't like watching those videos. And, I've noticed those little things too. I've even noticed, I picked up on like the little sarcasm in her voice where she's kind of belittling Chris and little things like that. But I don't think it was abuse. I don't think she was trying to hurt her kids. I mean, if she was giving them medication that they shouldn't be taking, then that is a problem, and somebody should have reported it, and there should be some record of it. But there isn't. So I think it's a rumor. I think she was a pretty good mom.
She did Benadryl. I mean, she openly said,
I gave my kids Benadryl too.
Right, but technically we're not supposed to till they're 6 years old.
Oh, well, in that case. Well, no, that's not true.
Well,
I think they had to be 2 years old or something.
Well, you're allowed to. And I mean, I have given my kids Benadryl because the pediatrician told me it's okay. You just don't give them like the 6 milliliters or whatever, they're telling you to do it for the weight of a 6-year-old child. But the problem was, and this came from Cindy, is that every night Shanann was giving them Benadryl and then would turn the sound machines on and make them go to bed at 6 p.m. every single night. And she called it this program called Baby Wise. The Benadryl was not a part of the program. The Benadryl was for the allergies.
It's also for putting your kids to sleep. But I got to interrupt you a little bit here. But there is a lot of books out there that give you ideas like this with the sleep schedule. You want them to go to bed. We don't know if it took the kids like 3 hours to fall asleep. They could be going to bed but playing for a few hours and then falling asleep. My kids used to do that. I would have to go and lay with them, and then they would just keep talking and talking and talking, and then finally they would go to sleep. But if I didn't stay in there with them, they would be jumping on the beds and playing hard and not actually going to sleep. But it was actually quite a lot of fun. My kids would always have my oldest especially would just have these most bizarre questions. He would just I felt like one of those teachers in high school that just ask a question and then you go off on an hour-long tangent, and then you don't have to do any work in class. That was what my son was doing to me. He'd be like, "Daddy, so what about this thing?" And then 45 minutes later I'm talking about it and I'm like, "Dang it, you're supposed to be going to sleep."
Yeah. Now,
But there's a whole bunch of different mindsets on raising children. I don't think there's one way for everyone, and I don't think there's necessarily a wrong way. So if they're going to bed at 6 and they're getting up at like 5 in the morning, then it's not really that bad. If they're going to bed at 6 and they're actually falling asleep at 8, it's also not that bad. But if they're like strapped to the bed and they can't move and they're drugged, and that's how they could fall asleep, that is child abuse, and that should be reported. And Chris should have, if that was something that was happening, it would have been Chris's responsibility to report that because he is the father. If the mother was doing something, nothing was reported. I don't think she was a bad mother. I think she was just a new mother, like every new parent. You try things and you find out if it works for your kid.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are going to have different opinions on it, and I respect that. I know it doesn't even have to do with Shanann. I mean, anyone is going to critique any other person's parenting. That is just kind of a part of adulting. You're always going to have people who criticize the way you do things. But like I said, if people want to go down that rabbit hole, there are pages about it.
I'd recommend avoiding it if you can. But
yeah, I like to look at all the facts on all the sides, but I'm not going to try to persuade anyone to think or feel everything. But I think we can all agree that Chris has admitted what he did and he's garbage. So that's why I feel comfortable not talking kindly about him on our page.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a tough scenario,
It is.
I really feel bad for parents when they're new because I know what it was like for me. And it's funny when you plan for a child, even you read all the books, you do all the things, and then you expect everything to work out like it shows in the book, but then it doesn't.
Right.
And then even after you have one kid, you think you finally figure things out, a month, 9 months later, a year and a half later, 2 years later, then you have a second child and everything changes. You're only a parent. I mean, you're a new parent. You can't just figure these things out. You don't figure it out until you're a grandparent, I think. And you just kind of wing it the whole time and hope for the best. I think she was a pretty good mother. I think there was a few things that I was like, she probably shouldn't have done that. But was it abuse? I don't know. I mean, just looking off the lives that she did, the videos, I think she was trying to have fun with the kids, and I think sometimes they actually had fun. Other times they were tired and didn't want to do that stuff.
I feel there were a lot of times that the cameras should have needed to be off in that house. But I get it. She had a goal. She was trying to make money. But I do agree with, I'm not sure who said it in the chat, but as a mom, I had a lot of hard times watching some of the videos when the kids were saying, I'm hungry. Like, you know, I don't want to even really talk about it, but yeah, I think that there's just a lot of kind of misinformation out there too as well. Like, we weren't in that house, so we don't know. And the interesting thing is there was always someone kind of living with them too at some point or another. Like, the Rusick family lived out there. Then when their house was being built, they lived with another family for a couple months. Then Frankie Jr. lived over there for a while. I mean, seems like there was always someone around.
Yeah, that is true.
I'm checking.
I think the Rusicks lived with them for a long time, actually, right?
Yeah.
Which actually made them closer to the kids and made this whole situation even harder.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
And I think they were, you know, happy having the Rusicks there. I don't think Chris complained about it that much.
No.
And I think they got along with them, you know.
I'm just checking on our chat. Well, I wonder if we'll ever find if our Reddit guy got some closure. I'm not going to give up on it. I'm going to continue to check to see if he ever answers my email or if he updates the post, because I'm super curious to know what.
I want to see these letters, you know. I want a picture of the box. I want to see how she like stored them. Is it like a box with a little bow on it? Does the box have hearts on it? You know,
Rob wants the box. He wants to know what that looks like. Is it?
I mean, it's going to tell you a lot more about her personality and whether or not he should be worried or not.
Yeah, you're right. Is it just a shoebox?
I mean, she got a shrine in the closet. It's like behind a panel somewhere in the back.
He described it as just a shoebox on the top shelf of the closet behind the junky towels. So
hidden in plain sight, just like serial killers.
She should have maybe like hid them under her mattress. I don't think the closet in the hallway was for those. I'm trying to think of a better way she should have hid them.
Yeah, I don't know that she should have hid them at all, you know, because like that's one of those things that comes up and you're like, what the heck? And then you got to defend yourself too. I mean, or you know, maybe she won't even defend herself and just be like, well, you know, you're my backup. Chris is my main, you know.
Or you might be like, you know what? I was attracted to him and I wrote him, but you're my main now.
But I mean, look at this picture of this guy. This is why this case is still going, and like why 70% of my viewers are women. I think just the attractiveness of the people involved. And I think that's why they write them the letters that they do. And also, I asked if anybody in the chat had written them, and nobody answered. I thought that was kind of interesting. Just saying.
I don't know, Rob, if you can go to my page and play a video, but I did think he was an attractive person when I like would watch kind of the older content when they were covering the story, but then like some of the stuff I watched, like this one I posted where he's in the kitchen and he's like singing and dancing.
Which video is it? I should be able to find it.
Let me take a look. It totally changed my perception of Chris, and I was kind of like grossed out by him. It is called. It just kind of gives you like another look at what he was like, and I believe this is before he met Nicole. Okay, can I send it to you through chat? It's called Chris Watts' Bizarre Antics.
Yeah, I just have to open up
Here,
the chat.
so it's easier. But like, if we want to watch this and take a look, it's just like, this is not how I pictured him. If I pictured him, I don't know. And it kind of changed my opinion of him. And I was like, ew. Riding down the rabbit hole says I was creeped out by him. Did you watch that video too that I posted? I don't know, it gave me a different view of him. I was like, something's off.
So that was a bad idea.
What happened?
It just starts playing, and then I can't stop the audio. And whenever I scroll up and down, it changes to a different video. Let me see what else I can try. Let me try this. Okay, I think I got it.
Okay.
How is it possible someone can go from this to this? Someone make it make sense.
What you waiting for? Get up, stretch out, get on the floor. Hot dog, hot dee dog, hot dog, hot dee dog. It's a brand new way. What you waiting for? Get up, stretch out, get on the floor. Hot dog, hot dee dog, hot dog.
That's the Mickey Mouse song, right?
What you waiting for?
Yeah, I had to do that. See, the kids are.
Well, of course the kids like, but like, I don't know, like, I just got this vibe that he is not genuinely happy. I don't know, like, what are your guys' thoughts when you watch that? Like, we've all acted dumb to entertain our kids, right? But it's like fun to act silly. But he just kind of seems disconnected and off. Like he's.
I don't agree. I think he seems a little weird when he actually starts talking to the camera. You know, I bet you if the camera wasn't on, he would probably be singing louder, more unafraid. But the camera's on, so it makes you feel weird.
Yeah.
I think he was normal until he wasn't. I mean, at least I want to believe that. He seems like a decent person when you see stuff like this. He seems like he cares about whether or not his kids are crying or laughing or having fun.
There's no doubt weird about those kids. I mean, you see it naturally when they are in the ocean swimming together. Like a wave comes and he just naturally grabs Bella out of the way. Like you can tell he's not even thinking it. And then there's a video I posted where like Cece is running over to the fence to climb over the fence, and he just runs over and grabs her. Like his natural instincts were to protect them. But I kind of agree with riding down the rabbit hole. Like he just seems like he's kind of faking it here. I don't know.
I don't think he seemed like he was.
Or maybe you're right because
I think the amount of stress in his life just kept building up, and then he didn't handle it properly, and it exploded in his rage that killed his family. So I think he was.
So you're right. The camera's on him, and he's like trying to have fun with the kids, and he's probably like, Well, and it looks like he was kind of singing before the camera was on, so maybe he was like mad she started recording, but didn't stop to say like, "Please stop recording me." You know, like that's a possibility too, because he said he hated being on camera.
Yeah, it's funny. If I don't know, if like say I had a partner here and they hated doing this stuff, I would still be bugging them like crazy to, it's fun. Join me. I think I would be like Shanann. She wanted him to enjoy it too, but I think it's just something that you either like or you don't like.
Yeah, I think they were so wrong for each other.
I think they should have started out in family therapy, from the day they got married. And I don't think that's a bad idea for anyone. So if you got friends who are getting married, I don't think it's wrong to suggest you guys start counseling that first week after your honeymoon. Because like there's a lot of things you could have nipped in the butt when you look back on things if you would have talked about it.
Yeah, because they have tension because of the wedding planning, right? With the families not getting along, and then somehow they were able to put all that past them and reconnect the families together when the babies came, so that they could, be involved.
Somebody in one of my video comments was telling me how Shanann and Cindy actually had times where they actually got along. And
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to determine any of that stuff. Like, so I usually don't get into it because, one moment here and one moment there and what you see on camera, and then you hear like all these rumors, and it's hard to tell what's actually happened. But the person, I can't remember their name, but the way they described it it made sense that, there would be times where they probably did get along, and then, I don't know, I can see the stubbornness. I get it, I don't agree with it, but there was a lot of animosity.
Well, also, like, I actually pinned a photo for us to use another time of Cindy and Shanann, and it must have been like with one of the recent trips, and they were both holding up like a Thrive thing together, and you could tell like the family wanted to be a part of all of it too, like, and like you said, it looked like her and Cindy were having a good time together.
Yep. Well, guys, so I think we're going to have to wrap it up. It's 8 o'clock here. And so that means it's late everywhere else. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. I don't mind discussing things, and I'm not like closed-minded about the details, but I am skeptical, and I just don't want you guys to like think that I'm completely closed-minded about stuff like this. So just want to put that out there. But there may be a live tomorrow afternoon or Sunday or both. I don't know. It just kind of depends. I've been doing a lot of writing, and I see all these books get published, and then I'm like, I'm not going to even try because they all get like shut down. I imagine mine would too. But I've got a really good story, I think, about Chris Watts, and I put the prologue in my community tab last weekend, and I'm going to put chapter 1. There's like 5 parts to chapter 1, but I'm going to put that in the community tab this weekend. You can read some more. But it's just, I enjoy writing, so that's why I do it. So anyways, guys, I had a lot of fun, and I really appreciate that you were all here and that you hung out for so long. But anyways, I hope you guys have a good night, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Bye.